And welcome back to LinkedIn Logs, the Jobs Podcast. I'm your host, Chad White. If you didn't know, this is LinkedIn Logs, the Jobs Podcast. For the website, cpluscomedy.com. Like I just said, it's a website. Go there. Welcome in. We're at episode 100. Here we are. It's a very special day. Episode 100. I'm all giddy. Not because it's episode 100, but because I had a good workout. And then I had a good recovery stretch session, and then I had some coffee. I didn't get very good sleep last night. In fact, let me check that. Also, it's 11:11. Make-A-Wish. What was my sleep last night? I know it wasn't very good. My body battery, according to Garmin, is at 52. I was at 94 this morning. Apparently, I slept from... Oh, interesting. I got my requisite 6 hours. Oh, you're not supposed to get 6 hours. Here we are. This is episode 100. Remember, I did take a couple of months off at one point, so we'd be well past 100 at this point. But hey, let's get into the stories I have. Hold on. I'm moving the most important ones down. Okay. All right, because I have a lot of stories. I have so many stories to get to. Joke's on me. Oh, hell yeah. Damn it. No, you better not lock me out. I'm linking to the LA Times on this first one, so you better not lock me out, I swear to God. This comes from LA Times. Paramount outlines plans for Warner Bros. Cuts, written by Meg James. Look at that head of hair. God. It's a gorgeous head of hair. Now, Paramount does not own Warner Brothers whatsoever in any facet. There's no way Paramount owns this company, but Paramount wants it. David Ellison wants Paramount. Side note, I rewatched Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, which is, I love the Mission Impossible series. Even my least liked Mission Impossible movie, Mission Impossible 2, which is also known as the horniest Mission Impossible. It's because he was filming it, I believe, at the exact same time as Eyes Wide Shut. Even my least favorite is still loads better than most action movies, and I watch a lot of action movies, mostly while I'm cycling. Anyway, I rewatched Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, also known as MI8, and as I was watching the opening credits, produced by David Ellison, and I was like, I hope this is the last one. I hope we never get another Mission Impossible series. David Ellison's Paramount Skydance wants to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. They also are putting out this unseated plan where they're trying to, as Meg writes, allay some of those concerns by detailing its plan to save $6 billion, including job cuts, should Paramount succeed in its bid to buy the larger Warner Brothers Discovery. Remember, the Netflix deal with Warner Brothers still has to go through the Department of Justice because it is a monopoly. This deal would also have to, like if Paramount, God forbid, bought Warner Brothers, it would still have to go through the DOJ because the magic word is monopoly. Paramount wants to offer $108.4 billion so that it could buy the likes of HBO, CNN, and everything else, including the streaming portion. Warner Brothers board wants to go with Netflix's $82.7 billion deal. Even though I believe David Zaslav, the head of Warner Brothers, a man who will be a billionaire regardless of what happens at the end of the deal, of either deal, he has said as much. He wants to go with the Paramount deal, which just like, dude, shut your mouth. You have your money. You're fine. You're made $500 million. You're fine. You're good. Paramount previously disclosed that it would target $6 billion in synergies, which means that they would lay off people who they've already, like at Warner Brothers, who whose jobs overlap with people at Paramount. It stressed that the proposed merger would make Hollywood stronger, not weaker. The firm, however, recently acknowledged that it would shave about 10% from the program spending should it succeed in combining Paramount and Warner Brothers. The cuts would also come from areas other than film and television studio operations. We would see accountants, like if Paramount has 24 accountants and Warner Brothers has 36 accountants, more or less the Warner Brothers accountants would probably be gone. Warner Brothers plans to release 17 films this year alone. Paramount said it wants to nearly double the output of 15 movies, which would bring the two studio total to about 32. If the deal goes through, Paramount said that it would become Hollywood's biggest spender, shelling out $30 billion a year on programming. I do not think that's true. Well, like in terms of owning all those networks, yeah, you can spend money on a Food Network show and on a Paramount. I don't think they do anything on Paramount Network, and on a Paramount Plus. Is that what it's called? on a Paramount Plus show, and along with the other networks and HBO Max, which I guess would fold into Paramount Plus, which is such a stupid decision. And that would all total $32 billion, correct? Or however many billions that they want to spend, 30 billion, but Walt Disney said it plans to spend $24 billion in the current fiscal year on shows and or movies, as well as movies. Obviously, Paramount has raised its offer of $30 per share. I believe that was an all-cash thing, too. They pushed the deadline to February 20th to say for the Warner investors and the board to be like, hey, let's get it. Some analysts believe Paramount may have to raise its bid closer to $34 a share to turn heads. Paramount last raised its bid December 4th, which was the same day that Netflix was said to be the winner and declared the winner. Earlier this month, Netflix converted its bid of $27.75 a share to all cash, which is largely taken as one of the better bids, of the better bids of the two. And even conservative billionaire Larry and Trump friend Larry Ellison pledged to backstop $40.4 billion for the equity required for Paramount, for his son's Paramount Skydance to purchase Warner Brothers. But also recall that $24 billion of this entire deal from Paramount Skydance would come from royal families in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. Either way, Warner Brothers is losing out. They're like people. The same synergies will happen to the likes of people at Warner Brothers when Netflix purchases them anyway, which is unfortunate, and that comes with the territory. When, let's not forget, Disney is not the good guy. There's no good guy in any situation here. When Disney purchased the Fox assets, 9,000 people lost their jobs over the course of, the 2 or 3 years that the deal had to close. But thousands of people lost their jobs. And you might say this is part of the industry, but now we're in unseen territory, which we'll get into in a couple of stories after this, when it comes to what the industry is today as opposed to what it is 20 years ago. I think when a lot of people in the industry and outside of the industry talk about what how it is and how things are unfair, I think they're remembering what it was 30 years ago, where it was easier to get a show on or to get a song out or to get a movie out. Like, look at movies like Short Circuit and Short Circuit 2. Like, go on, those things exist, but now it's much more difficult to get something made because you have to prove that there's going to be money in the long run of this, no matter what it is. Except for that Melania documentary. That $75 million bribe that Jeff Bezos paid for that movie. Oh, Jesus Christ. That movie made $7 or $9 million in the box office, and it's the highest grossing non-nature or music documentary. By music, like concert film, like Taylor Swift. So it's ridiculous. All right, this next one comes from the New York Times. Washington Post plans cuts to reshape the newsroom. This is written by Eric Wimple, Katie Robertson, and Benjamin Mullen. Speaking of Bezos, the Bezos-owned WaPo is going to see a staunch amount of cuts before even the Super Bowl happens. No, a few reporters are being sent to the Super Bowl. Foreign correspondents are being asked to hold off on trips to conflict zones. And editors are being encouraged to experiment with new forms of storytelling, i.e., what can we do right here in the office and not send people out to do? They could do it over Zoom. Washington Post will see significant layoffs. This comes from the Post leadership in the newsroom and the business sides of the paper in the coming days as part of an effort to end years of financial losses, according to three people with direct knowledge of the changes. But the cuts also appear to be aimed at something else, reorienting the Post coverage. Now, this article was put out last week on January 29th. So I assume that today or tomorrow, at the time of this recording and posting, we will probably start seeing people laid off. The Washington Post is basically in competition with the LA Times, the New York Times. While it doesn't have as much reach, this will definitely put the Post into a much smaller category than what the New York Times has to offer. Over the past decade, as the three writers here figure out, over the past century rather, the outlet evolved from a scrappy metro newspaper into a general interest national news powerhouse that cracked Watergate and covered far-flung countries as well as sports, fashion, dining, and travel. The cuts are intended to direct the Post's resources to topics that executives believe better align with the newsroom's areas of expertise and readers' interests, i.e. what Jeff Bezos wants, and in formats that people increasingly turn to for information, which I assume would be video or social, i.e. TikTok, and et al. Not and et al. Et al. Executives devised their approach after studying the digital traffic to the organization's coverage. Now, if I go to Washington Post, the website right now, what do I see? Something that looks a lot like the New York Times, but in dark theme. And there's a lot of vertical video, which makes sense. Yeah, this is something like, it's very reminiscent of the New York Times. Whereas if I go back to, I still have the LA Times article up. If I go to the LA Times, yeah, that's a lot like the New York Times, a lot of vertical video. They're all going to this what their notions of New York Times, of what a newspaper online should look like. And here's the New York Times just for comparison if you're watching the video. A lot of vertical video. All right. Now, the hope, these sources say, is that the moves will help make the paper self-sustaining, which is what Jeff Bezos wants in the end. The company has lost hundreds of millions of dollars in recent years. The newsroom has no idea what's going to happen. Last year, the Post completed a round of buyouts that trimmed the newsroom by dozens of journalists. In the months since, many of the journalists who remain have grown increasingly frustrated about the lack of clarity from Mr. Bezos and the paper's publisher, Will Lewis. Some staffers have raised concerns on social media in recent days that the looming cuts would affect the Post's quality, and journalists from the international and local sections have circulated letters to Mr. Bezos. Something I could see happening, which I don't think this is pure speculation, but I truly do not think that this is out of the realm of possibility. Is that Bezos would rename this paper so that it doesn't seem like it is such a generalized sectioned portion. It only covers one thing, and in the same way that MSNBC is renamed to Miss Now, I feel that Bezos and his team and the editors at WaPo would rename the Washington Post to, if HuffPo was changed from Huffington Post, from Ariana's last name to HuffPo, I feel like Washington Post would take on the moniker of its nickname or just change its name to The Post. And that's how it'll, and so it seems like it could be like, we cover everything, when in actuality they can only cover just so much. Over the last weekend prior to this, roughly 60 members of the Post International desk sent a letter to Mr. Bezos, essentially pleading for their jobs. Again, people took to social media to say like, "Hey, we need this." Last Friday, Friday before last, Tremors reached the Post sports desk, which was preparing to send a phalanx of reporters to cover the Winter Olympics in Italy. Editors had already paid $80,000 for lodging and secured 14 credentials to cover the games when Kimi Yoshino, a managing editor, sent a terse email that appeared to call things off. I kind of just, jokingly said that, but I really do think that, hey, maybe this will change. To the Post as opposed to Washington Post. It's not, I really don't think, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. All right, let's keep moving, because I have so much to get to. This comes from a Hollywood Reporter, written by Alex Weprin. Disney names Josh. Jesus, I can't even. There we go. I guess that's fine. If you're watching the video, I had to change the aspect ratio. Disney names Josh D'Amaro its new CEO. Dana Walden named President and Chief Creative Officer. Last week, Bob Iger, my good friend, my dear friend. He's one of the only CEOs that I have respect for, even though he does make mistakes and he does fuck up, and yes I said fuck, and yes I said up. But he's one of the few that I have respect for. Bobby, if you're listening, Bob Iger listens to this show. Late last week, Bob Iger said, for the second time, I'm stepping down. 2026 will be my final year. And speculation went rampant. Who's gonna take over Bob's spot? If you pay attention, if you follow along, we knew this was going to happen. Josh D'Amaro is going to be the next CEO. The entertainment Disney formally revealed D'Amaro's promotion Tuesday morning, which is today. And it also elevated a very smart person who I think should be she has wonderful ideas, and she should be the face of Disney. I think she has a bigger face than D'Amaro does. But Dana Walden is the president and chief creative officer. I suspect that, maybe in 5 years or so, when no offense to D'Amaro, but when he steps down, Dana will be the next person in charge. But I do like Dana, and I do, and again, I'm not a person who likes business people a lot, as if that's something I've said. Their roles they're formally announced, but they will formally move into those roles on March 18th, the same day Disney holds its annual meeting. I also assume that that'll be the same day we'll get more news about Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars and the next Spider-Man and more video games and what Disney and probably the Disney Plus Hulu merger. Some boilerplate stuff about how proud they are. Remember, Iger returned to the company in 2022 because Bob Chapek just could not handle running Disney at all. Josh comes from the Parks division. He took over for Chapek when Chapek moved into the CEO position. And Chapek did not do a good job. Also, Chapek was like, when he led Disney, I would say in the modern era was probably at its worst. Worse? Is at its worst. Disney was at its worst. Worse. Disney was at its worst. It's worst. Again, I like Dana. This Josh guy is. I'm gonna start calling him JD because in my head I'm calling him JD. This Josh guy seems to have his mind in order. Just go look up Bob Chapek and things that he's been vocal about. Disney is the unusual company Disney is an unusual company among the entertainment giants because it has experiences division that is a major financial force and a major complexifier. DeMauro was tasked with overseeing a $60 billion expansion of the parks business, including a slew of new attractions based on well-known IP, multiple new cruise ships, and even a new theme park and resort in Abu Dhabi. And of course, you know Dana Walden from Oliver comments. Wait, hold on. Dana Walden, Star Wars. Every time there was something wrong going on with Star Wars, Dana was in the forefront being like, this is what's going to happen. I promise you. Okay. Let's move on to the next big story. This is the final story. Again, it comes from Hollywood Reporter, written by Katie Kilkenny. Christopher Nolan wants to know where all the Hollywood jobs are, too. Christopher Nolan, if you don't know, last fall he was elected the president of the Directors Guild of America. And you might say, hey, that's not fair. He's already a working director. That's what happens. You want to elect the people who are working or are big names. They're going to take care of you. Just like SAG, Fran Drescher was in charge of SAG, and now it's Sean Astin. September was when he was elected. He's in charge of the Guild, which hosts over 19,500 members. And if you would recall, since the last strikes that ended in 2023, I believe, we are, as a whole, the entertainment industry is still in flux. People don't have a lot of jobs. Production in the U.S. has slowed down. Generative AI is a problem. It could be a problem. Streaming is just becoming the big thing. Netflix might buy Warner Brothers, as I discussed earlier. And Nolan, while he does not admit to having the answers, he acknowledges that there are issues and we will have to work through them, and they will have to work through them as well. I'm in the industry, it's fine. Nolan told a small group of reporters at the headquarters of DGA in LA on January 29th, all of these changes over the last 10 to 15 years particularly, and the last 5 years in particular, they pose enormous challenges. It seemed to me that I have something to bring to the table in terms of trying to help represent the members through what is a turbulent period. There's upcoming labor negotiations. There's the problems with AI or the threats of that, and the corporate consolidation, as I mentioned before. Consumer investment in the members' work has been extremely stable, he argued. All the while in 2024, the union saw a 35% decrease in employment in television and an 8 to 12% downturn in film. The DGA does not yet have figures for 2025. He's trying to figure out what's going on and how do you find new models for, how do you get back connected to these new models that have created this disconnect. The DGA is tackling the downturn in work in part by lobbying to boost domestic production. There's expanded production credits in California and New York. The union is now pushing for a federal tax incentive, a stackable 25% federal rebate that could be combined with state rebates. These are the current regime talks about American-made things. Wouldn't you want an American-made TV show or movie? Wouldn't that be great? And also, importantly, there is a huge incentive to bring production back to LA, a lot of productions back to LA, because even if there are things being made in the United States, they've moved out of that area into other areas of the United States, the continental United States. Jobs will also be a key issue during the union's 2026 labor negotiations with studios and streamers. He said, yes, we are back at a point because these negotiations happen and they go for so long. The contracts only last 3 years. I read that yes, while it would be fine to have 5-year or 7-year contracts or whatever, 3-year contracts put the unions in better positions. Why am I pointing myself? I'm not union, but it puts the actors and the writers and the producers and the directors and the grips and everything in better positions. Because imagine you couldn't get a pay raise, for instance. Again, I'm not the be all end all on this. The discussions are expected to begin on May 11th after SAG and the Writers Guild initiate their own negotiations. But things like healthcare costs and contribution rates and negotiations and AI and all that stuff, that's part of the deal. Now, Nolan on AI is optimistic but wary of the deal that Disney struck with OpenAI in December, where it was licensing. It allows licensing for its characters to be put into you can just like go into OpenAI. I think it's like Sora. That's Google. Go into OpenAI and type in like Stitch does a backflip, and you can make videos, but there's no voices, but just the characters themselves. Licensing is a step in the right direction, he argues, but the unions need to see, quote, how that's going to be paid through the union members. Remember, people like Robin Williams was ahead of this in the 90s when he was Genie. He said, you can't copy my voice. You can't use my likeness for any of that. And every time you heard Genie outside of Robin Williams, it was Dan Castellaneta from The Simpsons. And this final part comes from Deadline, written by Katie Campione. Christopher Nolan says directors union likely to accept a 5-year deal with AMPTP. DGA president talks AI, healthcare, tax incentives, and more ahead of 2026 bargaining. Oh, Lord. Deadline, you got to stop with the pop-ups, man. He says in this interview, I don't think a 5-year extension is in any way a realistic proposal. I think the AMPTP knows that. That's the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. Did I say? Oh, unlikely to accept. Excuse me. Sorry. I got it wrong. That was me. All 3 unions, the writers, actors, and directors, are set to negotiate new contracts with the AMPTP in the coming weeks. And Deadline broke the news last month that the bargaining unit for the studios would offer a massive injection of cash into each of the guild's health and pension funds in exchange for longer contracts. Again, imagine not getting a what's it called? Increase in pay, a raise. Imagine not getting a raise after 3 years of working at a company. Maverick. He doesn't know I'm recording the highest rated show for C+ Comedy. But imagine not getting a raise, even though everybody else, is getting a raise. Nolan made it clear that no formal proposals have been made since the DGA won't officially approach the table until May, ahead of the June 30th contract expiration. But he doesn't think a 5-year contracts are realistic. If we had agreed to a 5-year contract in March of 2020, where we would be now? We were living in an industry where things are shifting very, very fast in terms of how they chose to run their businesses. And there are no assurances they'd be able to give us on how that's settling down or what path or that path would be. They're continually subject to turbulence in the marketplace, their shareholders and so forth. So we have the balance being able to renegotiate at the appropriate time. So we're open to discuss anything, but that seems very, very unlikely. Let's see. For the health and pension plans, during that interview, he said, he wrote that the health plan has, quote, run negative for the past 2 years, and those losses are projected to increase significantly in the future. Okay. The Directors Union isn't alone, as SAG-AFTRA and the WGA are facing a similar issue, and although deadline here is the DGA's reserves are in the best shape of the three, it's high on everyone's list of priorities to resolve. When you join SAG, for instance, and if you're in SAG and you paid your dues, you get a really good healthcare coverage, but you have to have worked that year, or the previous year or whatever, in order to get that. So that means booking a job, getting a certain amount of lines, and then also being able to pay your dues so you can have access to that healthcare. And then also pensions. Pensions are very important. When you are of the age to accept pensions, and you're in the guild, you'll be able to get a nice chunk of change from all that hard work that you put in. Nolan is very, quote unquote, encouraged to see the AMPTP is focused on the issue of healthcare and pensions. He insists, quote, the employers are going to have to raise their contributions. That's just a fact of life. Healthcare costs have gone up enormously in the country, and blah, blah, blah. Back-end profit participation is very important. In the last contracts for theatrical and TV, the union secured a bonus residual that the studios pay out for titles. Yeah, there's the misspelling here. Pay out for titles that overperform on streaming platforms. That means if Stranger Things season 5 just does so exceedingly well, which it did, then the directors, then the actors, then the producers, the writers on those episodes get paid residuals. Residuals are very important. If you recall shows like DuckTales, because I'm rewatching the original DuckTales, those shows were in the 80s and there's shows in the 90s, Friends, Big Bang Theory. If you hit syndication, you get good every show gets residuals. Every show and movie gets residuals. But in the past, you would get so much money. It was just like unfettered. And then as time marches forward, you get less and less and less money because those shows and movies are paid less. Sometimes people are just getting, the last year's residuals for, again, let's say DuckTales, 1983, and they'll get like 7 cents. But then there are shows like Seinfeld and Friends and Big Bang Theory. And because those shows did so well and those actors and producers and maybe directors, I don't know, were able to negotiate a lot of money because the shows did so well, then yes, Jennifer Aniston is going to get a butt ton of money because she was in that show and she was one of the main actors. I wonder because we know the residuals for Seinfeld, so I wonder what the residuals are like for Friends. I don't know. And Cheers. Well, I would guarantee Cheers is probably not as much as Friends and Big Bang Theory. I wonder besides Big Bang Theory, what are other modern shows with decent residuals? Because, I just finished Blind Spot last year. I finished Blind Spot last year. That show made it to 99 episodes, which is not syndication. But a show like The Goldbergs, I see that on the CW and at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So I don't know. Residuals. I scrolled down and it's all right. In addition, the studios agreed to some changes to the overall residual structure, reconfiguring foreign residual payments so that those are tied directly to the streamer's foreign subscriber base rather than the domestic subs. As one of the analysts points out, the 2023 contract also, quote, increased the foreign payments by 76%, which led to a 21% overall increase in streaming residual. Nolan says it's just one example of how, quote, the old models have to be reappraised. And that's very true in the streaming era, which has been difficult because of how rapidly the landscape changed in the last few years. Nolan also points out to the, quote, constant undervaluing of cable assets as another current example of the phenomenon, even though those assets still, quote, make tremendous amounts of money. Oh, I don't know if that's true. I see, we always see how, networks, Paramount and Disney and Warner always say like these networks aren't making us any money, and NBC Universal just spun off its cable networks into Versant because it was dragging down, I guess, the overall portfolio of NBCU, but who knows? Let's see. All right, continue on. AI protections. Since it established in the 2023 contract, Nolan has served as the chair of the AI committee tasked with understanding the evolution of the technology to ensure the guild is on the forefront of it. The agreement also establishes a commitment from both parties to have biannual meetings to discuss AI developments. I read an article yesterday in the New York Times with a bunch of AI leaders talking about how if it's possible, what AI advancements we'll have in like 5 years or so. And they're all over the place because there's like 10 different leaders, but obviously the people who work at Perplexity think it's going to overtake healthcare and drive for us to do all this other stuff. And there's other people who are like, that ain't gonna happen. Let's see. The DGA, Nolan also alluded to a desire that the DGA not only be prepared to draft effective AI protections, but help guide the legal framework for regulating companies like OpenAI, which he says are, quote, trying to essentially position themselves as a distribution platform, mostly, I think, to get the benefits of Section 230 and try to inoculate themselves from any kind of legal consequences for copyright there. But beyond that, it's like, okay, if they're becoming distribution platforms, how will they manipulate? How can we have a voice in ensuring the things that we're passionately dedicated to on the creative side? He also talked about the domestic production issues, which I talked about previously. But yeah, Nolan is for his people of the directors, and he's for just the creative community in general. And it's important that they're ahead of this and we have salient conversations now as opposed to getting to a point in May where there could be a work stoppage in the future after that. Not in May directly, but in the future after negotiations, could break down. All right, I'm done. Listen, if you like what you heard here, head to the website cpluscomedy.com where you can see me talk to famous people. I've got a new interview coming out tomorrow as of this recording and posting. That I hope you check out. If you want to watch a video version of this episode, go to youtube.com/cpluscomedy. You can see a video version of the other podcast, Late Night Lately, the Late Night Show, and the Constitutionals, the Entertainment Business News Podcast, as well as video versions of the interviews called The Interviews. Subscribe to those shows wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at cpluscomedy. Me on those platforms at Chad Black White. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye.